Malaysia just banned Israeli ships from docking, but that's not even the most shocking thing happening there right now. Western media calls it a moderate Muslim success story. A safe bet, a stable economy. But step off the plane in Kuala Lumpur, and you'll see something they're not telling you. Something that challenges everything you think you know about this country. Meet Sarah Chun. She's 34, from Singapore, literally just across the border. In 2021, she made a decision her family thought was insane. She moved to Malaysia. Now, if you've been following the news, you'd think she walked into chaos. Religious extremism, political instability, economic uncertainty. That's the story, right? But here's what happened her first week. She's sitting in a hawker center that's a food court, and she's watching something that doesn't make sense. There's a Muslim family eating next to a Christian couple. A Buddhist grandmother is sharing a table with a Hindu dad and his kids. And no one's giving each other weird looks. No one's segregated. No tension. Just people eating. And then she pulls up the numbers. Malaysia ranks 48th on the Global Peace Index in 2024, safer than France, the UK, and the United States. The Institute for Economics and Peace puts it ahead of countries we call safe every single day. But here's what Sarah discovered that changed everything she thought she knew about this country. While Europe faces recession and America battles inflation, Malaysia is doing something radical. They're growing. Fast. 5.9% GDP growth in 2024. That's outpacing most developed nations, including the ones lecturing them about how to run an economy. Let me introduce you to Ahmad Ibrahim. He's 28. In 2022, he was living the dream in Sydney, Australia. I'm a software engineer, making 85,000 Australian dollars a year. Expensive flat in a trendy neighborhood. Eating instant noodles at home because a dinner out cost him $50. In 2023, he did something crazy. He moved back to Penang, Malaysia. His family thought he'd lost it. His Australian friends asked if he was okay. Because who leaves Australia, for Malaysia? Here's what he earns now. Equivalent to 45,000 US dollars. That's almost half what he made in Sydney. But watch this. His quality of life? It doubled. He owns a condo, 1,200 square feet, 3 bedrooms. Costs him $600 a month. That's the price of a parking spot in Manhattan. He eats out 5 times a week at restaurants where a full meal costs $8. He saves 40% of his income. In Sydney, he was saving nothing. According to the Numbeo Cost of Living Index for 2024, Kuala Lumpur is 59% cheaper than London and 62% cheaper than New York City. Ahmad sits in his apartment every morning, coffee in hand, view of the Penang Hills, and he's confused why he ever left. He describes it like this. In Sydney, I was rich on paper and broke in reality. In Penang, I'm middle class on paper and I feel wealthy every single day. But this economic boom is creating a problem the government doesn't want you to know about. Malaysia is experiencing the fastest brain drain reversal in Southeast Asia. People like Ahmad are flooding back, and it's causing a silent crisis. Here are the numbers. 1.3 million foreign workers documented by the Department of Statistics in 2024. But unofficial estimates? Try 3 to 4 million undocumented. They come from Bangladesh, Myanmar, Indonesia, the Philippines. And they're taking the jobs no one wants to talk about. Construction? 60% foreign labor. Agriculture? Same. Service sector? You're looking at workers earning a fraction of what locals would demand. Let me tell you about Fatima Rashid. She's 52, Malay woman. Worked in a garment factory in Johor for 18 years. Then in 2022, her boss called her into the office. She remembers everything about that moment. The fluorescent lights buzzing above her head. The smell of synthetic fabric in the air. Her heart was pounding. They let her go. Replaced her with workers from Bangladesh who'd take 40% less pay. No benefits. No questions. Fatima could have been another statistic. Another casualty of globalization. But here's what she did instead. She started selling batik textiles online. Traditional Malaysian fabric with modern designs. Took her 3 months to figure out shipping, payments, and marketing. Now, she's making 3 times what she earned at the factory. Working from home. Setting her own hours. The World Bank's Malaysia Economic Monitor from March 2024 confirms what Fatima discovered. The old economy is dying. The new one belongs to people who adapt. But the immigration issue is nothing compared to what's brewing beneath the surface. Malaysia's greatest strength is also its biggest threat. Here's the breakdown. 69% Malay, 23% Chinese, 7% Indian, 3 major religions. 4 official languages if you count English. It's a diversity experiment that's been running since 1957, and it's held together by something controversial. Really controversial. It's called the Bumiputera policy, established in 1971. It gives ethnic Malays preferential treatment in education, housing, government contracts, and business opportunities. The official reason? To correct historical economic imbalances where Chinese Malaysians controlled most of the wealth. But here's what it looks like in practice. Meet Kevin Tan. He's 24. Malaysian Chinese. Brilliant kid. Graduated high school with a 4.0 GPA. I wanted to be a doctor. Applied to public medical schools across Malaysia. Rejected. Then he watched his Malay classmate get accepted. Same school. 3.4 GPA. Lower test scores, but the right ethnicity. According to a 2024 poll by the Merdeka Center, 68% of non-Malays feel discriminated against, the highest number since 2008. So what did Kevin do? He went to a private university, paid 3 times more, graduated, and now he works in Singapore making 4 times what he'd earn in a Malaysian public hospital. The Khazanah Research Institute released a report in 2023 that confirms Kevin's story isn't unique. Malaysia has lost 1.8 million skilled workers to emigration since 1990. Most of them, non-Malays who couldn't break through the system. But here's where it gets really complicated. I spoke with Dr. Rashid Hassan, composite character based on multiple economists I researched. He's Malay, educated in London, ran Malaysia's economic planning unit for 6 years. He told me something I didn't expect. Without the Bumiputera policy, we'd be right back where we started. Pre-independence, Chinese Malaysians controlled 90% of the economy. Malays lived in rural poverty with no access to education or capital. We'd have economic apartheid. So who's right? Kevin, who worked twice as hard and got punished for his ethnicity. Or Dr. Hassan, who's trying to prevent the majority population from being economically sidelined in their own country. The answer might surprise you because there's a new generation changing everything. In 2022, something unprecedented happened that shook Malaysia's political establishment to its core. They lowered the voting age to 18, added automatic voter registration. Overnight, 5.8 million new voters entered the system. Youth turnout in the 2022 general election, 73%. That's higher than the United States, the United Kingdom, or Australia. These kids didn't just show up. They voted out one of the longest ruling coalitions in world history. The result? Malaysia's first ever hung parliament, a coalition government, and Anwar Ibrahim, a former opposition leader who spent years in prison on what many consider politically motivated charges, becomes prime minister at 75. Let me tell you about Ain Hisnaiza. She's 19 now. In 2021, when she was 17, she went viral for exposing a male teacher who made a rape joke in class. Not a small joke, not a comment taken out of context, a full-on joke about rape. She posted about it online, and the reaction? Death threats. Police reports filed against her. Schools tried to silence her. The education ministry pressured her to apologize. She became a symbol. Gen Z Malaysia refuses to accept the old guard's corruption, sexism, and hypocrisy. But here's the contradiction nobody's talking about. This same generation, the one protesting corruption and demanding accountability, is also the most religiously conservative Malaysia has seen in decades. Pew Research Center published a study in 2023. 89% of Malaysian youth aged 18 to 29 say religion is very important in their lives. That's up from 76% in 2013. Scroll through Malaysian TikTok, and you'll see hijabi influencers dancing to K-pop. Chinese teens speaking fluent Malay. Indian kids explaining Islamic finance. all while calling out government ministers for stealing public funds. It's progressive and conservative, liberal and religious, angry and hopeful, and it's working in a way no Western country can figure out. But there's one thing that could destroy all this progress overnight. Malaysia is caught between two superpowers, and one wrong move could cost them everything. Here's the situation. China is Malaysia's largest trading partner, 20% of total trade in 2024. The U.S. is a crucial security partner and Malaysia's second largest source of foreign tech investment. The pressure is crushing. The U.S. is pushing Malaysia to pick sides on Taiwan, on South China Sea disputes, on Huawei, and 5G networks. China is threatening economic retaliation if Malaysia aligns too closely with the West. I spoke with a government official, I'll call him Datuk Rahman, to protect his identity. He's 48, works in the foreign ministry. He described a meeting in 2023. The Chinese ambassador walks in, very polite, very friendly, delivers what he calls a friendly warning about U.S. military exercises Malaysia's participating in. 2 weeks later, a U.S. State Department official asks why Malaysia isn't condemning China's aggression in the South China Sea more forcefully. Datuk Rahman realized something. Malaysia has to play both sides perfectly. One misstep and the economy collapses. Here are the stakes. 40% of Malaysia's electronics exports go to China. Another 15% go to the U.S. If either side cuts them off, millions lose their jobs. So what's Malaysia's solution? They call it ASEAN centrality, refusing to pick sides, maintaining what Singapore's Kishore Mahbubani, former president of the UN Security Council, calls strategic ambiguity done right. Watch how it works in practice. Malaysia just banned Israeli ships from docking. Huge news. It appeases the Muslim population, scores points with China, and signals independence from Western pressure. But here's what they don't tell you. Malaysia quietly maintains trade with Israel through Singapore. Goods flow. Money moves. Nothing actually changes except the optics. They condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but didn't join sanctions. They criticized China's treatment of Uyghurs, but signed massive infrastructure deals with Beijing. They participate in U.S. military exercises, but refuse to host permanent American bases. It's a tightrope walk, and it's working. For now. But there's a clock ticking that no one could stop. By 2050, parts of Malaysia might be uninhabitable. And it's already starting. The Malaysian Meteorological Department released data in 2024. 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature increase since 1980. Kuala Lumpur recorded a 38-degree Celsius heat index last year. That's up from a historical average of 33. And here's the cause nobody wants to address. Palm oil. Malaysia is the world's second largest producer. It's everywhere: your chocolate, your shampoo, your biodiesel. And it's destroying the country. 140,000 hectares of forest are lost every year, according to Global Forest Watch in 2023. Let me tell you about Siti Qasim. She's 41, environmental lawyer from Borneo. When she was a kid, she'd swim in a river near her village. Clear water, fish everywhere, monkeys in the trees. By the time she was 15, that river was black. Palm oil runoff had poisoned it. The fish were gone. The trees were gone. At 28, she found an entire orangutan family dead in what used to be their habitat. Babies, mothers, all of them, starved because the forest had been bulldozed for a palm plantation. That's when she became an activist. She spent 13 years fighting corporate land grabs in court. Won 7 landmark cases protecting indigenous lands. In 2023, she scored her biggest victory, forced a plantation company to pay $4.2 million in damages and restore 2,000 hectares of land. But here's the scale of the problem. A Nature Journal study in 2024 concluded, at current rates, Malaysian Borneo will lose 90% of its old-growth forest by 2050. She still remembers the smell. Thick, chemical, burning her throat as she stood in what used to be rainforest, now endless rows of identical palm trees stretching to the horizon. And here's the impossible contradiction. The Malaysian government pledges net zero emissions by 2050. But palm oil accounts for 25% of agricultural GDP. That's billions of dollars. Millions of jobs. Economics versus environment. Who wins? So far, economics is winning. So what is Malaysia really? Because the answer isn't what the media or the government tells you. Let me break it down. It's a middle-income country punching above its weight economically. It's growing faster than most rich nations while keeping costs low enough that people can actually live. It's a multicultural pressure cooker that somehow hasn't exploded. Yet, 3 major races, 3 major religions, living in the same cities, and it works messily, unfairly, but it works. It's a democracy with authoritarian tendencies. You can vote, but the same political families have controlled power for decades. Until they didn't. Until the youth showed up. It's religiously conservative, but socially progressive in weird pockets. You'll see women in full hijab running tech startups. You'll see LGBT activists operating in the shadows while gay sex is technically illegal. It's environmentally destructive while producing some of Asia's fiercest eco-warriors. The same country destroying its rainforest is also home to people like Sidi Qasim, fighting like hell to save it. It's stuck between superpowers, but playing the game better than almost anyone. They're taking Chinese money and American security and somehow not pissing off either side. That's a skill. Let me take you back to Sarah Chun. Remember her from the beginning? The Singaporean who moved to KL in 2021? 3 years later, she's still there. She married a Malaysian Indian man, started a consulting business. I have a daughter who speaks 3 languages before kindergarten. When people ask her if Malaysia is safe, stable, or successful, she tells them this. It's all 3 and none of them, depending on the day. She says the media wants simple stories. Danger or paradise. Malaysia is neither. It's messy, complicated, unfair, beautiful, frustrating, and somehow it works. Let me put this in perspective. Safer than most of Europe and North America? Yes. More economically dynamic than Japan or South Korea? Arguably, yes. More diverse than any Western nation claiming to be multicultural? Absolutely. More politically engaged youth than the US or UK? The numbers say yes. But also, more structurally racist policy than most democracies will admit to. More vulnerable to climate change than almost any country in the region. More economically dependent on authoritarian China than is probably smart. This is what the experts miss. Malaysia doesn't fit Western models of success or failure. It's operating on a different frequency entirely. And that brings me to my question for you, and I really want to know. If you had to choose, live in a stable, expensive Western democracy where you're financially struggling, or a developing nation with racial policies you disagree with, but where you can thrive economically and your kids play with every ethnicity without thinking twice. Because that's the actual choice millions of people are making right now. And their answer is shocking governments worldwide. Tell me in the comments. Would you move to Malaysia? What's your line that would make you leave your home country for an opportunity somewhere unexpected? And if you think I'm missing something if you're Malaysian and I got this wrong, or if you've lived there and have a different experience, please correct me. This conversation matters. Because Malaysia isn't just Malaysia's story anymore. It's the story of what happens when the old rules stop working and no one's quite sure what comes next. Next video, we're breaking down why Singapore might actually be in trouble despite its success and why Malaysia could be the real winner. You won't want to miss it.